Howdy folks, I'm Matt N3NWV, and we're here today to talk about the spotting tools used as part of the Parks on the Air program. What is spotting? Very simply, it's the process by which people put information online that helps hunters find activators. Now, I'll preface this by saying that there is no requirement to use these tools. If you want to do it the old-fashioned way and spin the VFO and listen for people calling CQ, knock yourself out. Nobody's going to tell you you're doing it wrong. There are three main things used as spotting tools in the POTA program. We have the POTA.us homepage, we have a very active Facebook group, and POTA has a dedicated Slack channel. Let me walk you through them. I'll tell you why we have three different tools and when you might want to use each one. Now, the heavyweight champ of the three, at least if you go by the number of people using it, has got to be the POTA.us homepage. And do note the URL is POTA.us. This is not part of the parksontheair.com website, although from there is a link to the spotting page. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense that this is the user favorite. This is the tool that was built by the Parks on the Air folks specifically for POTA use. It's a custom fit glove, and so for most people, it kind of works the best. When you first land on the spotting page, you'll be in the default view, which is a grid for the active spots, and then down towards the bottom, a separate grid for scheduled activations. Scheduling activations is not a requirement. Activators are more than welcome to just show up at a park and start calling CQ, but many of them do like to give you a heads up where they're going to be and when, so that you can plan your shack time accordingly. This is a good time to remind you, though, that we encourage hunters to hunt all activators, not just unique parks to you. Just because you've worked that park before doesn't mean the activator has their 10 QSOs. So help them out and give them a call. The active spots represent parks that are hot right now. There should be an activator sitting there, and with any luck, you'll be able to hear them, have a QSO, and work that park. Let's take a closer look at the information provided by one of the active spots. In the very top, you'll see the activator's call sign and the park designator where they're located. This is the person you're calling and where they are. Right below that is a hyperlink which will take you to more detail about the park if you're interested in a map or park stats, things like that. Below the park link is the U.S. state or province outside of the states in which the activator is located. This is needed because there are many parks that span a lot of geography. The Appalachian Trail, for instance, runs through 14 some odd states. Below the state is the frequency on which the activator is operating. Take note that this is always specified in kilohertz. The next line is the call sign of the person who created the spot. In many cases, this will be the same call sign as the activator or simply the word self. That indicates that the activator themselves put this spot into the system. The next to the last line is a free-form notes field. This is often blank, as you can see in the second spot on the page. But in this case, it was useful because the activator happened to be at a place where there are two parks that overlap. So the spotter has put the second park designator in the notes field. Another common use for the notes field is for the spotter to put their signal report in. That way you have some idea of how well the activator was heard at some other location. One other thing you may see in the notes field is a message that starts with RBN. There's integration between the POTA spotting page and the reverse beacon network. So if you're a CW activator, you will be spotted as long as the beacon network can hear you. The last line is the age of the spot. How long ago was it entered? Spots have a lifetime of 30 minutes. Once they get older than that, they drop off of the page. And they're also sorted by this value when the page is brought up. And just a quick note about that sorting, you'll notice under the active spots label that it says the page refreshes itself every minute. That's handy. You don't have to hit the refresh button to get updated spots. One thing to note though, because the spots sort by the last spot time, you might be looking at one and have it move when the page refreshes. If a newer spot comes in, it'll bump above the one you were looking at on the list. So you might have to do a little bit of scrolling or keep an eye on what spot you're working with. There are a couple of features built into the spotting page that may help you manage when it gets busy. They're up here under this hamburger menu on the top left. And the first, we call it late shift mode. You're probably more familiar with it as a dark theme. When you turn this on, you'll notice that the spotting page goes to a black background and dark gray colors. If you're working in a dim environment, this might be a lot easier on the eyes. The other option that's in here is to prefer table view. The table view turns the spotting page into a much more condensed list of information. You can see that all of the same data is still provided in each one of the table rows, but it takes up a lot less screen real estate than the grid view. The other really handy thing about the table view is that the columns are sortable. As I move up here near the activator column, you see a little sort arrow appears to the right of the word activator. The big benefit to this is that you can see my spot just updated. It went from 2 to 3 minutes old, but my order didn't change, even though the one down here at the bottom is now brand new. So now that you're good with what a spot is and how to navigate them, let's talk about how they get into the system. The life cycle of a spot is pretty simple. It starts out as a new spot and comes to be via this Add Spot button. There are 4 fields that are required to enter a spot into the system. The first is the call sign of the activator, whoever is actually at the park. In this case, I'll put in myself, and I would say that somewhere in the 75 to 80th percentile of new spots are in fact created by the activator when they get to the park. So the very first spot for any activation is very frequently the activator's call sign. And then the spotter call sign is either going to be the same because it's the activator entering the spot, or there will be a word in here like self or same that indicates to everybody that it was the activator who entered this. On some occasions, though, the activators don't have cellular service, so they just set up the HF rig and start calling CQ. Eventually, somebody hears them. If that's the case and you're entering a brand new spot for an activator who doesn't have one, obviously you're going to put their call sign in the activator field and then your own call in the spotter call sign. The other 2 required fields are the frequency on which the activation is occurring and then the park reference. And then finally, there is the optional comments field. Since it's optional, you could leave it blank, but putting in a signal report or some other information that helps out other hunters is always appreciated. Once the spot is in the system, hunters will see it and start calling the activator. If you can hear an activator, you can do what's called re-spotting them. That's this green button in the bottom left of any one spot. You'll note that the exact same box comes up, except it's mostly filled in already, because the activator, the frequency, and the park designator are already known. What we need is your call sign. I just went and verified that I can in fact hear this activator, and I have him about 5'5" here in Western Pennsylvania. With my call sign and optional comment filled in, I just hit the spot button. Since I just updated this spot, it's the newest one and jumps to the top of the list. So that's it for the mechanics of spotting, which just leaves the question, well, when do I spot? The short answer is if you can legitimately hear an activator, then you can legitimately spot them. However, there are 2 things that you can do to cut down on the spotting noise. The first thing you can do is to look at the age of a spot. If a spot is only a minute or 2 old, there's not a lot of value in re-spotting that activator. Unless you have a comment that differs wildly from the one that's already there, probably best to leave that one alone. The other thing many people do is they wait until they have actually worked the activator to spot them. The problem with spotting based only on hearing them is that you never know if propagation is reciprocal. You might be able to hear the activator 5'9", they might not be able to hear you at all. And your spot could mislead other hunters in your area into thinking that that's a park that's going to be easy for them to work. In the end, it's a judgment call, and you'll have to make up your own mind whether your spot is going to contribute any valuable information to the cause or not. But when in doubt, err on the side of spotting, because the activators really want to be found. The second place where you'll find a lot of information about activations, both current and future, is in the POTA Facebook group. It's not as easy to navigate as the spotting page, because obviously there are a whole bunch of other conversations going on. But you will very frequently see posts like this one from Frank stating that he's ready to go at a park. Sure enough, if I flip over to the spotting page, there he is at Park 1339. While harder to navigate, the Facebook interface does have the benefit of keeping track of a conversation history associated with the activation. Seasoned activators will often start a Facebook thread when they're planning an activation, spot themselves on the main page when they get to the park, and then let the hunters continue the conversation over on Facebook. Obviously, there's no requirement to participate in Facebook, and I've never seen a spot that was only on Facebook and not on the main POTA page. Having said that, if you're new as a hunter, this is a great group to be a part of. It's a friendly community. There's a lot of great information to be had here. And particularly for your first couple of hunted QSOs, might be nice to be part of a Facebook thread and just get a little encouragement along the way. The third tool that's a major player in the POTA spotting system is Slack. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Slack, I'm afraid that a deep dive on this tool is way beyond the scope of this video. Suffice it to say that it's designed to help teams stay organized and in communication with each other. One of the features it has to facilitate that they call channels. They're a little bit like discussion threads on a forum. I'm going to assume you already have a login to Slack and some basic familiarity with the tool. Parks on the Air is a Slack workspace, which I've already joined, so it shows up in my list when I go to launch the tool. If you haven't yet joined the POTA workspace, click the Sign into another workspace link. And the POTA workspace URL is just parksontheair.slack.com. Once you're in the POTA workspace, you'll see a couple of things. First and foremost is our fearless Slack admin. That's N0AW over there on the right. And he's either trying to work an amateur satellite or take down Godzilla. We're not sure which. More importantly, over on the left, you'll see the list of channels that have been created as part of the POTA workspace. Right now, we want to focus on the POTA Spots channel. One of the things that happens when a spot is created or updated over on the POTA.us page is that a new message is inserted into this channel. If it's a duplicate of the information on the spotting page, you might ask why we care. Why do we bother doing this? Well, there are two very good reasons. Reason number one is that the Slack channel keeps a history of all of the spots, going back a long, long way. So if for some reason we need to figure out what happened with a particular spot, or you worked a particular activator, but you don't remember what park they were at, the spotting channel has the history of that information. You can go back and find it. The other reason to post spots into a Slack channel is that Slack is available both as a desktop and a mobile app, which supports push notifications. Once you're part of the Parks on the Air workspace, you can set up your preferences so that you can be notified on your mobile device or desktop when there are new spots. Slack has a ton of options for how and when you're notified, can maintain separate preferences for your desktop versus your mobile device, has do not disturb hours. It's a very powerful infrastructure that, frankly, there's no point in us trying to replicate. So if you want push notifications on your phone or your desktop or wherever for new spots, Slack is the way you do that. So those are the three what I will call sanctioned spotting tools for the POTA program. You'll notice we didn't make any mention of the standard DX cluster network, and that's because while it does get used for POTA, it's not really in any way connected to the POTA program. There's no automatic integration with the clusters and no guarantee that a spot that's on POTA.us will appear here. Basically, the story for DX clusters in POTA is the same as it is for DX clusters the rest of the time. Use them if you want. If they're useful to you, great, but I wouldn't bet any money on what I find here. And that wraps our overview of the tools used for spotting in POTA. If you have questions or suggestions, best bet is to come join us on the Facebook group. We'll be happy to help you out if we can. Till then, happy hunting.